relative to each other. At this point, I know that there's kind of an effort to push each of the sites to try to find the appropriate patient to finish off cohort 2A. But I think as you figured out, we've now finished cohort 3 in all 3 studies, and that I know you.
Right.
They'll be happy you got that information.
Yeah, that's true. Some people were complaining on the site about a quiet period. Are we having a quiet period right now?
No,
for the company?
I think a quiet period suggests that there's something that you're doing from the SEC's perspective that means you have to go silent. That's not the case. I think what you're seeing is the company being a little more retrospective in when and how it releases information. In part, it's that maturation process and looking to move from the over-the-counter penny stock market to Nasdaq, and probably represents a little bit of our board, having a little more influence over overall strategy for the company.
Oh, and there were a couple of questions that came in that weren't on the list. But they came in this morning.
Yep.
Let's see.
The one about rudely walking away. Don't even ask that one.
Okay, I don't know.
I figured that was a joke, but I saw that on the list. So
it was mostly a joke. I think someone was being funny, but I thought it was a funny thing to add.
Exactly.
And let's see. The new questions that weren't on the list were. I think you might have told me this on the stairs. The cell line that we'll be using for MMD, will it be MA09?
Right now, it's the same cell line as we use for dry AMD and Stargardt's.
Right, and you said those will be starting in about a month.
Well, the goal is enrollment by the end of the first quarter. We'll see whether we hit that again. It's not in our control any longer.
I see.
It is completely up to Jules Stein and scheduling the patients that they want to screen for enrollment.
I see. And that will also be going through DSMB approvals and all that because
it'll follow, unfortunately, the same.
It's the same product.
It's the same format. Yeah.
Yeah. But I see.
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of a little wishy-washy question, but
yep. I'm going to keep track of the time while we're talking.
Okay. And a gentleman asked, what do you think the value of the company should be now, and what do you think the value will be in 5 years?
It's always fun to think of what the intrinsic value would be if the market really understood all of what we had. But I think based on what's out there publicly right now and the risk that as always comes with being an early stage clinical and preclinical company, I think we're actually probably above where I would have expected the market to have been. And I think a lot of that comes from the folks on InvestorStemCell.com. I think you guys do a great job advocating for us, but I think at the same time, we have this really robust group of investors that believes in the company, and when the stock goes down, accumulates more.
Right.
So that helps.
Yeah.
But if you look at other companies in our space, I mean, we've got a market cap that could, in some cases, is 10x bigger than theirs. Gil Van de Bach, Gil Van Bakken, who just went up from Athersys, I think they're like a $30 million market cap, and they've got a phase 2 asset with a Pfizer partnership. So, there's a piece of it where I really can't complain about where we are today. Where we are in 5 years, I would hope that we're looking at a company that is worth no less than $1 billion, but with a market cap that may be more like $2 to $5 billion. And part of that may depend on the types of partnering deals that we get along the way, what rights we retain, and then whether or not, for instance, the Stargardt's trial is something that will become a pivotal study in phase 2, so that there's an opportunity to reach licensure in that period of time.
I see. I think those are all the questions I had.
Okay.
I thought of one where you were discussing in Spain, actually, the structure of the treatment. Once it does reach the market, whether there'll be I believe the term was, will there be licensing for different medical treatments, medical clinics?
Right. How would it be marketed? Well, I mean, I think the reality is that there are only a certain number of surgeons, just like 1,700 in the U.S., that can perform the vitrectomy. There's thousands of vitrectomies done. There are actually 300,000 vitrectomies done in this country. So the capacity is there to treat hundreds of thousands of patients. One process would be to simply, market it to those surgeons. Steve Schwartz has looked at this and said, again, his excitement is this is going to drive a lot of people into becoming vitreoretinal surgeons, right? If this stays on the course that it seems to be on in terms of efficacy, and we go all the way through to approval, he said there's going to be a huge demand for vitreoretinal surgeons. Now that may mean that within the eye hospitals, they just increase their staff. Another model could be that you start creating regional eye hospitals yourselves. Us or a partner does that, right? You could imagine one of the big pharmaceutical companies that already has a big ophthalmology program saying, this is a great place to create, like the Cancer Centers of America, create an ophthalmology, an eye hospital that's bringing in people largely over some of these regenerative therapies like ours, and at the same time is giving them an opportunity to treat them with other proprietary products that they have as well. So, come in and get your Lucentis, Eylea, whatever you might have for wet AMD, and if the dry AMD patients over here, and whatever else they may have in their pipeline. I mean, ophthalmology has gotten to be a gigantic focus for all of the big pharmaceutical companies, and put that into the intersection with regenerative medicine and all of the issues around longevity and aging. And I think that there could be create a real sea change in terms of, or tidal change in terms of how eye hospitals exist and how they could exist.
Right, but it sounds like it could be like 5-10 years down the line after the treatment is out.
Exactly. I don't think that's going to happen
market.
soon, but it's certainly something that could.
Understood. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
I really
so listen,
appreciate
as you go
it.
through the notes, if you have any questions, pop me an email. If you
Thank you.
anything, particularly if you're nervous about whether I was clear with something and you want to make sure it's accurate, I'm happy to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Before you put it up on the
appreciate it
board.
because I know my notes are a little bit scattered because it's
Yeah.
the first time doing this, but I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
No worries.
Thank you very much.
The biggest thing is just making sure